Hi everyone, I don't have a costume for this video, which is sad because there's so many different people I could dress up as, but what I do have is this lovely little X-Men Apocalypse pin that I got a couple of years ago when I saw that movie in theaters, so we're gonna wear that. And it's really nice because I like being bribed to see movies with little trinkets because I'm very materialistic and I like to hoard little treasures, like a consumable media swallow building a nest of worthless goods for his young. If I can get the stupid thing on. My mutation is a lack of hand-eye coordination. There we go. This is actually very uncomfortable. It's poking me in the chest. Even with the little cover on it, it's still poking me in the chest. But you know, it's funny. The theater that I saw X-Men Apocalypse at got the name wrong on the marquee. It was spelled incorrectly. It was spelled Apocalypse. Whomever did that just should get hooked on dark phonics. You may think that's a bad joke, but I think it's first class. I can hear you angrily typing away right now. Chris, this is the last stand!
Why did you make me do that?
So I saw Dark Phoenix, and it was bad. I mean, it wasn't awful. It was the kind of bad where after it was done, I just kind of went, well, that wasn't very good. I guess I'm going to go do something else now. I've seen a lot of people talking about how it differs from the comics, but I never really have a problem with that in most movie adaptations of comic book stories, mostly because, as a writer, I love saying that, I understand that when you're adapting something, you know, in order to have a coherent story and to make sure the pacing is good and that it translates properly from book form to movie form, sometimes things gotta hit the cutting room floor. But I honestly don't know what the excuse is for this movie because they've already had a shit zillion other X-Men films that handled characterization for them. Not to mention Jean Grey and the Dark Phoenix is a story that's been done so many times both in and out of movie form that this should have been the layup of the century. I think the main problem with this film really comes down to the fact that three of the characters in particular were massively bungled. And in a movie like this, you're gonna live and die on your characters. And to have messed up three of the most important ones is, quite frankly, the kiss of death from the most chapped of metaphorical lips. But I want to start by talking about three characters that I think they actually did okay with. Of course, this is going to mean spoilers. I figured that would be obvious, but you know, come back after you've solved the harrowing dilemma of whether or not you should see this movie. And when you do, be sure to smash that like button, like Disney's gonna smash the reboot button on this franchise in a couple of years. Charles Xavier. I was actually fine with Charles' character in this movie, mostly because his character arc is the same as it's been in all of the other films as well. Essentially, what it boils down to is all of the problems the X-Men face are the result of Charles' good-intentioned meddling. He spends most of the movie trying to justify his actions to the other characters, only in the end to admit that he was wrong. It's fine, it's whatever, and it helps that James McAvoy's good in the role. Quicksilver. He's barely in the movie, which is good, because it gives them no opportunity to bungle him. I know everybody loved Evan Peters as Quicksilver, but the bit got old fast.
Cool.
In this movie, he's in the beginning of it, and he gets to do his little bullet time speedy thing, and that's really nice, and it's a fun little sequence, and then he gets tossed off screen for the rest of the movie, and this is a positive change. Essentially, it means the character gets to stay in our good graces by not being in the spotlight and getting ruined. Cyclops. He's basically just a yes man at this point. I mean, he's already had his moment in the sun, so he's really just there to reaffirm to the audience whom you're supposed to be supporting at any given point in the film. And I think that's about it. And if you're saying to yourself, wow, that sure is faint praise, you would be right. But I did say that I didn't like this film, so if you thought anything different, that, quite frankly, is on you. Now for the three characters who were ruined. Number 1, Magneto. What exactly happens between 1992, my birth year, if you were unaware, and 2000, when the first X-Men film is set, that turned Eric Lenscher from Michael Fassbender into Ian McKellen. Something in the water, I guess.
The girl dies.
Magneto's all over the place in this movie. Similar to Charles, his character arc has basically been reprising itself over the last several films. It's basically, this is what it boils down to. Magneto wants to be good, but then he does a bad, which gives Charles a sad. But you see, Eric, at the time, he was a mad, and killing people will often give him a glad. And that's basically it again in this movie, only now he keeps changing his mind, where he's like, I'm a good guy, no, I'm a bad guy, but you know what, I'm a good guy, but actually I'm a bad guy, but at the end of this, I'm gonna be a good guy. He has more changes of heart than would be allowed in a regulation Yu-Gi-Oh deck. At the end of X-Men Apocalypse, Eric had thoroughly and completely fucked off. He's got his own little village of mutant cast-offs, and they herd cattle and tend crops. He's content. And then Jean Grey arrives, and she's like, I may have murdered someone. And he's just like, yeah, whatever. I don't know who, so I guess that's fine. And then the army comes, and she's like, she's killed somebody. And he's just like, well, that sounds bad, but I don't know where she is. Wink. And then Jean Grey's like, oh, he's trying to hide me. That's real swell of him. I'm going to go out and completely bungle this by destroying these military helicopters. And so she does that, and Magneto's like, you gotta go. And she gets all huffy and leaves, because now she's disappointed. And that's really what this movie should have been called. Disappointed Phoenix. Beast! Wow, they really let Hank McCoy out to dry in this one. Jean Grey kills Mystique, and Hank loses his shit, and I'm not gonna stomp on the guy's need to grieve. I mean, we all deal with it in our own way. He just happens to turn into an angry furry. It's fine, it's cool. But Jean is his student. You know, he's a teacher at Xavier's school. Like, would he really want to throw hands with a child for making the mistake that Jean makes? Surely, if he's a teacher, he should know that all of the students that are brought to Xavier's school do run a pretty high risk of being potentially dangerous. What are the odds of a teenager filled with raging hormones, Adderall, and Smirnoff accidentally murdering one of their peers be pretty high, especially when they have the ability to bend the elements of the universe to their whim? Nah, it's whatever. Beast is just willing to claw out the throats of his closest friends and cause millions of dollars in property damage, all to kill a clearly disturbed 19-year-old girl who is being harassed by literal aliens.
When I lose control, bad things happen.
And that brings me to Jean Grey. I said it before that a Jean Grey story was an easy layup, but this movie got stuffed by the rim. In this movie, the Dark Phoenix power is a boost in the form of a space fart cloud that Jean absorbs. Solid. Another problem I have is that Jean Grey is the most easily manipulated person in the history of the planet. Like, her entire hang-up in this movie is that she feels like Charles Xavier and the other X-Men have manipulated her, and they're tricking her into, like, just using her for her power, her immense power, which is why she runs away, similar to Rogue in the first X-Men film. But then, like, the evil villain alien comes and's very clearly manipulating her. Like, you'd have to be... I don't even want to insult children by saying you'd have to be a child to not understand. Because the X-Men movies are about literal children. So, what's the excuse?
Who are you?
The better question is, who are you?
She's just dumb, I guess. But those are the characters of note. I do, however, want to talk about those aliens for a second, because I think they're hysterical. I think these aliens are great because they're shapeshifters and they take human form, and they've seamlessly integrated into our society and infiltrated the government and have gotten to very high-ranking positions immediately, like FBI directors and government officials, and they're just really high-ranking in spite of the fact that they act like literal aliens. Like, there's one guy who's, like, he's the, oh shit, it's Jason Bourne. It's that guy. He's one of the aliens. And he has bug eyes the entire movie, and he's got his permanent scowl, and he's just looking at everybody like this. Jean Grey kills Mystique, and they're at the crime scene, and like the police officers are like, do not cross, and he's just like, I am with the FBI. And they're like, right this way, sorry to keep you waiting. This is kind of silly, but hey, it's worked. I guess the whole planet came down with a case of the dumb. My favorite scene in the movie is the final battle on the train. It's just really great because you get like a horde of these like CG aliens in their man suits. They're all hoofing it towards the train, just like hoof, 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 hoof. You know, like how you run. And my favorite part about it is that it looks so basic and visually wondrous at the same time, because I swear to God, the entire wardrobe of this movie was purchased with Cole's cash. As I'm watching this horde attack in their beiges and browns, I can't help but wonder why our evil alien race of villains is dressed in the fall collection of JCPenney. You know, something else about this alien race that attacks, like they're the last of their kind, and they were following the space fart throughout space and time, and they wanted to use its power. Apparently it had destroyed their home planet, and they think that they can use its power to assimilate Earth and have it be their new homeworld. But they weren't counting on their only weakness, Jean Grey turning them into dust. Because that's what happens. She murders every last one of them, in a little tiny, little itty bitty genocide, because she wipes them out. But every hero has a dark side, so I guess it's fine. She's just an anti-hero now. Besides, we don't want an evil attacking alien race for a sequel that's never gonna come.
It's too late.
Now, I've said when talking about X-Men and Days of Future Past that I think X-Men's a great series to make movies about, and it's just a great series in general because you have these over-the-top, flamboyant personalities all coming together with a common goal. So I feel like Disney's going to do a good job and they're going to make it work. And you guys all owe me $1 on Patreon now because I was able to legitimately work in Days of Future Past play on words. So there you go. So, thank you for watching, everyone. I hope you liked this little video on Dark Phoenix. Did you see that movie? Let me know in the comments, because I want to know if you saw it. That matters to me. Yeah, I got nothing else. So, until next time, goodbye, decent friends.